In a week where Infantino has claimed the greatest group stage of all time, we have a sobering reminder of the blood that stains this tournament. A migrant worker is said to have died in a team hotel, and stories released of a Qatari whistleblower being tortured whilst in prison for speaking out about the safety standards and appearing in ITV's documentary. All then excused by a PR man who showed all the remorse that you would depressingly expect. Of course, we will eventually talk about the football, but these headlines deserve to come first, I think. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Ruairi, and I'm joined by my very good friend, Adam, and we have a special guest. Mark, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on to the show. A bit of a depressing start, but we'll get through it. How are you today? You good? Where are you calling us from?
I'm good. I'm calling you from Aberdeen. We have snow outside, so hiding in the warmth tonight. Very
nice. Winter's definitely arrived up in Scotland then. So you're an Aberdeen fan as well, right?
In Scotland.
Yeah, that's very true.
I am, yes.
Very true.
I am, yes, Aberdeen fan, long time Aberdeen. Do a bit of media work as well with them for their women's team. So I do cover all their games and then match interviews and reports and things. So yeah.
Nice. And how are all things Aberdeen? Oh, sorry. And how are all things Aberdeen at the moment? I know the Scottish League's a bit difficult if it's not Celtic or Rangers. How are Aberdeen doing this season?
Yeah, they've had a difficult kind of start to the season, a bit unpredictable. They're kind of up and down. They've had some great results and some poor results, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster as the new manager tries to settle in a squad of new players.
Adam, how are you doing today? You are with us. How are you?
Yeah, keeping very well. Busy week. And I think there's a lot to kind of talk. It's not just the football, right? There's been a lot of spin-offs like Samuel Eto'o clashing with a fan. And then we've also got Michniewicz ball, who continues to dominate the Polish news. But I'm sure we'll get into it in due course. So more importantly, Rory, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thanks. We've had 2 days of public holiday in Italy, which is nice, but it has coincided with the 2 days where there's been no World Cup football. So that's really irritating because now I have to go to work tomorrow and miss games, which is going to be very irritating. But apart from that, all good. Went to a World Fair, had lots of food. That was great. And now ready to talk about football. So I think let's start with the light-hearted stuff, and then we'll go to the dark stuff. So let's go with Czeslaw ball. Let's go with some Michniewicz and give us an update on Bielsa to Poland.
Yeah, so it's quite bizarre because if you count yourself a few days back, obviously Poland kind of had this incredible performance against France at the beginning of the week, so to speak. So anyway, they're going back to their natural kind of club / back to home in Poland. So it all starts off with the Polish Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki, who decided to give the national team a incentive, essentially a bonus. So 30 million Polish zlotys, which equivalent is about 5.5 million in UK pounds, which, you know,
Not bad.
it's not bad. But as you can imagine, the living crisis and everything, the fact that Poles haven't been given any kind of state support has rattled the Polish nation, especially as they don't believe this national team deserves to get any rewards for their performances in the first rounds in particular. Then there was rumours about a clash between Michniewicz and Lewandowski, where Michniewicz believes that the split of the money should be shared with the staff quite equally amongst the players and the staff. So then a few days later, it transpires that there's been a clash between Michniewicz and the Polish president, which is Czeslaw Kulesza. So the clash has been over a number of different elements. So not only about the reward of the 30 million zloty reward, but also around the fact that Michniewicz decided to have the players' families alongside him in Qatar, which Kulesza was against. Michniewicz decided that was kind of a more morale kind of boosting element, make sure that the players were motivated, they had their families by their side. For some reason, Kulesza didn't believe in that. And then also, as we exited the tournament, should I say, Poland that is, Michniewicz decided to give 14 of the players a rest, which, you know, for some of those players, they probably had a long season already. They probably had a long 2 years, in fairness. And it transpired that only 14 of the playing squads returned back to Warsaw to meet the Prime Minister and President, which didn't go down very well. At this kind of meeting between the Prime Minister and President, it was leaked that one of the players jokes about the fact that they get paid in euros and not in Polish zlotys, due to the fact that the Polish zloty isn't doing quite well against various different currencies. So that didn't go too well. And then just to tie it all off, Michniewicz obviously it's been rumored that because of his progression to the latter stages, for the first time in 36 years that Poland had progressed, it was automatically renewed. Now the Polish FA are deciding to review this. Now it's been announced tonight that they're going to have talks over the weekend and have a series of conversations with Michniewicz next week. Michniewicz has gone to the press today to say he is not going to resign. In the last 48 hours, there's been a few names circulated. The one that you alluded to, Bielsa, that's a very random one, but for Polish fans, first came about pre-tournament of the World Cup that he gave his own kind of first choice 11 for the Poland squad, which kind of was like a bit of random kind of element, I suppose. But it was one of those where you kind of go, okay, cool. So he's got some sort of interest. They dived into it. And Bielsa said that he would like to manage the Polish national team one day. Anyway,
I think
this
it's
is
a job
so
that's
random.
I think it's a job that's like suitably niche enough for Bielsa that it would be like, I think people would be both surprised and not surprised if it was announced tomorrow Bielsa appointed Poland. If you were like, oh yeah, of course, why didn't I see that timeline arriving? It kind of makes sense. It would be very exciting, and we've talked about an attacking team with a lot of attacking talent, with players that are quite exciting. I think Bielsa would be a very good manager to get the most out of that. How realistic do you think that is, Mark? I'm going to ask you about your thoughts on Poland in the World Cup in a minute. But Adam, how popular do you think, or how likely do you think the Bielsa ties are?
How realistic, I don't know, because I think he's been swanning it back at home in Argentina, right? So I don't know how realistic that is. But I suspect it's a project, right? I think that this is kind of projects where managers get to a certain age and they seem to like just be happy managing these kind of nations and, not have to deal with the day-to-day work, which maybe it suits Bielsa. Maybe it'd be with the agreement of Polish FA, he'll be able to spend time in Argentina and then turn back for, duties perhaps. There is definitely a cry from Polish fans to have someone that's a bit more total football. The press were quite deflammatory of the style of Michniewicz, let's put it that way. I mean, that's probably putting it lightly.
We were as well, right?
I think most of the world were kind of cursing at Poland, to be fair, about the bleach in their eyes from it. But Yeah, I mean, we definitely do crave something better. I think we're just embarrassed. I think the best phrase that was kind of picked up by a Polish press was, in decades to come, we will never tell our children about this squad and how they achieved the next round, because
Wow.
they're embarrassed about it. They're just purely embarrassed about the style of football that we achieved in the World Cup. And they take the France game as a pinch of salt.
Okay.
So it's one of those. Anyway, just to kind of round it up, obviously the likely names also thrown into hat: Roberto Martinez, Andrei Shevchenko today.
Nice.
There has been a real big rumor that went about, which was around a Polish manager who is manager of Wisła Płock. They are currently like pushing their weight, I suppose. They're fifth in the Extra Klasa, and his name is Maciej Bartoszek even. So I don't know too much about him. I don't know about his credentials, but by all accounts, he is a total football man in terms of the playing the philosophy. I think Polish fans do want to see a bit more kind of a blend of football, like total football, but winning it the right way, if that makes sense. I think we've seen teams like the Australians, etc., trying to play it, and there's going to be occasions where you can't play that total football, but I think we just wanted a bit more heart at the tournament from a Polish fan perspective. So yeah, I mean, I'll pass it on to Mark.
Mark, it was kind of like a running joke on our podcast. Obviously, that Adam's kind of Polish heritage, we like to keep an eye on Poland. It was a running joke across the pod just how terrible they were to watch. What did you make of Poland across the tournament? Do you think that squad is capable of more?
It's difficult. It's difficult to tell from the 3 games because the results were kind of really strange and unpredictable. You had the kind of 0-0 with Mexico in the first game. I think maybe if they had the win in the first game and the second game, it might be totally different to them. And I think that quite a lot goes on the order of who you play the teams in these groups. They had the Argentina last, so they kind of knew they had to get their games. And I think they dropped into this game. It's tournament football. As I say, that it's not about the performance. It's about kind of winning games and getting through. But I think if you don't get through, and you don't play great football, then they both cancel each other out. I think you can only get away with it if you're kind of having success, can you?
Well, that's it. I think people were willing to accept it because of, or more willing to accept it because they did get through the group. But I think you also forget that the team in 1986, right, the team that got to the quarterfinals, they did play really great football. And like Boniek is like a football legend, not just Polish football legend. Like they did play great football. And I think when you're compared to a squad like that, which is since lionized because it's been such a long time, it's only going to make it more stark, the difference, isn't it? But fingers crossed, Poland are able to get an exciting manager who's able to get a bit more out of these attacking players. Because I think for the next Euros, they could be a really exciting team. For the next Euros, I think they could be a team to keep an eye on. But before we go to the Qatar World Cup, we need to talk about Samuel Eto'o and him getting in a scrap outside the ground. They've been saying that this is a calm tournament. There's no alcohol, no fighting, while Samuel Eto'o's brought the violence. And to be honest, I think it was quite... My first impression, I was like kind of on Eto'o's side. Now, I'll give you my kind of reasoning why. Yeah. We can talk about the kind of thing around it. But I think the internet has made people unafraid of getting punched in the face. They're used to just saying what they like and having no repercussions. And this guy... Now, from what I've read, there's been like basically an orchestrated online harassment of Samuel Eto'o ever since the Algeria-Cameroon game, right? Yeah. And I always get Cameroon and Senegal mixed up every single time. Algeria and Cameroon. And it's kind of been an orchestrated online attack. And then this guy outside the stadium asks him, and Samuel Eto'o very clearly tells him to go away. He then shoves the camera in his face and continues to hassle him. I think at that point, if the guy wants to hit you, it's your own fault. Now, it all stems back to the game against. It was the World Cup qualifier. There was a really terrible refereeing performance from Gassama, I think his name was.
Yes.
There was 2 goals disallowed, a goal given that shouldn't have been disallowed. That should have been disallowed. It was an awful refereeing performance, and there was a lot of decisions that were contentious. The Algerian FA went to FIFA and to CAF and tried to say we want to play the game again. They saw nothing wrong with it. we can go into what we think, how accurate we think that is. But I don't think it should be for the fans to then try and take it into their own hands and harass players outside the stadium. Like, I'll go to you first, Mark. What did you think when you saw this? Personally, I started laughing, I'll be honest. But
yeah, I think it is one of those that you see the wee clip and you kind of laugh about it, but then you kind of remember that how stressed out and harassed is Eto'o feeling if he's willing to go to that point. It's clearly having an impact on him. It's clearly getting to him. You don't know as well if he's potentially had any kind of run-ins with that particular person in the past. So it's difficult. There's maybe more to that little coming together than met the eye. But yeah, I think he certainly seemed to strike him with a good right foot volley near the end.
Properly booted him, that's for sure.
He did, but he made a good connection with him. But yeah, Adam, what do you think of it? Because I remember the game at the time. I think we maybe talked about it as like a contentious thing for the World Cup qualifiers. The refereeing performance was genuinely shocking. But I don't think Samuel Eto'o had anything to do with it, right?
Probably not. No, probably not. I stress that because he's part of FIFA, so you have to put that asterisk. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've been watching a little bit of that documentary on Netflix. You could never kind of guarantee it, but yeah, I think Eto'o has almost a duty just to kind of ignore it. But I appreciate what your sentiments are. I'd probably, if it's anyone in the public and you're getting harassed by someone, you probably would give it some as well, to be fair. Probably wouldn't do it in the same way Eto'o did it, though, in fairness. But I would definitely be like harassing them and saying, do one, basically. But yeah, I don't think he'll be invited to the next game. Let's put it this way. I don't think he'll be there for a little while as a representative of FIFA for this World Cup, because ultimately he's an ambassador for this World Cup as well. So I think that'll be taken away from him right now. The apology, though, was kind of half-assed as well.
Yeah, it was.
Fair.
He didn't.
It was kind of like an acknowledgement. But he went, this is what he put. He went, Algeria must stop its unhealthy climate, kind of putting it diplomatically. But yeah, just leave it now, basically. But yeah.
Well, we can all agree, as far as bad PR for this tournament goes, it's definitely not up there with the worst. And we need to get onto that, unfortunately. So in this week, as I alluded to in the intro, Infantino has claimed that this was the greatest group stage of all time, ignoring the fact that this is going to be the last 36-team World Cup, and next time it's going to be 48, therefore getting rid of this fantastic group stage. That's not the worst thing that's come out this week. It has been revealed that a migrant worker lost his life working in one of the team hotels. I think it was for the Saudi Arabia team. It was claimed that there was no safety equipment or not enough safety equipment. There was 2 people on a 3-person job. And the PR guy has come out and said, death is a part of life. We're having a successful World Cup, and this is something you want to talk about right now. Death is a natural part of life, whether at work, whether in your sleep. A worker died, our condolences, but it's strange. It is something you want to focus on as your first question. Now, it's getting harder and harder to ignore these things. And on this pod, we're actively trying not to ignore these things. We're trying to keep on top of it and kind of talk about it as much as we can. But just how much worse is it that they seem to have no willingness to accept any responsibility? Like, Adam, I'm going to go for you first, and then Mark will get your thoughts. It just stings a little bit more that there's not even like a slight show of kind of remorsefulness or anything.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like that there is a silence being bought at FIFA, because there's the case that you rightly pulled up on our WhatsApp group, which was the case of Abdullah Abhais, who's obviously, there's going to be a documentary on ITV. So I won't steal your thunder, Rory, on this, but essentially as part of that, he called out a lot of the abuses of workers in the process of building stadiums. For example, these workers weren't getting paid on time. There was no water for them, bearing in mind the heat they must have been working in. And he kind of, reined it in and kind of raised it to the FIFA committee, who practically ghosted him. And then he was then essentially jailed himself. on different grounds. This is what the Qataris have kind of, done that kind of little slice of, it wasn't because of this, it was because of that. And they've got around it. And now obviously he's been abused in these prisons himself. And it stinks of hypocrisy from Infantino when he talked about before the World Cup that this was about trying to raise the voices of those that are oppressed, for example. And he's definitely silenced it. And, he feels like he is every nation. He is every person. It's just like, you can't be every person if you're taking a blind eye to it. And it's not the first time, obviously, FIFA have done this, right? I appreciate a lot of people have kind of said, we're wokes. We didn't kind of call it out when it was Russia, but we did call it out when it was Russia. The problem was it wasn't to maybe the same degree in terms of the matters and the issues that are being highlighted in Qatar. It's been for decades, unfortunately, and I think unfortunately we've got a poisoned organization in FIFA. So. What about you? I mean, obviously, we've said about you introducing it, but what's your thoughts as well?
I don't know. It's obviously all of it's awful. And like the guy, when you hear about what happened to Abdullah in the prison, it was like it's tortured, basically. It's left in an air-conditioned room with minus temperatures for prolonged periods of time. It's physically beaten. It's everything you can imagine of. And it is... the reason they're saying is because he didn't fulfill a contract that he agreed with them. Like, even so, even if he did do that, this is not the crime doesn't fit the punishment, right? I think what we're realizing is that with Russia, it was talked about, not to the same degree, you're right. But then I think this World Cup coming straight after the Russian World Cup just meant that there was a bit of momentum in terms of like, what the hell is going on with the World Cup? What the hell's going on with FIFA? And it's all led to this kind of steam train that's coming through now, and everything's been talked about, which is fantastic. It's great. We'll see if it makes a difference in terms of selecting countries in the future, because Saudi Arabia are still being dubbed for a World Cup within the next few. So we'll see if it makes a difference. But I think it's just really important that people keep talking about it. In terms of anything changing at FIFA, I'm not convinced. I think Infantino is much, much worse than Blatter, and maybe it's better the devil you know than the one you don't, right? I don't know, Mark, how do you feel about these stories and the fact it's being talked about so much? It's kind of positive, but then it just is so depressing constantly, right?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, isn't it, for anyone kind of involved in football, or just any kind of football fan loves watching the World Cup, but they've got this shadow that doesn't normally hang around in the background. So everyone's kind of caught in this: should we speak about it? Should we not speak about it? Do you boycott the tournament? Like, it's happening, and how you fit that in, and you kind of only have to go online and to social media to see the difficulties where, the differences of opinion of some people saying that, it's being too much of a light's being shone on it, and you should keep the political side out of things. But I think it's an opportunity. I don't think, if people are dying during the tournament because of bad practices around the tournament, and how much money has been sunk into the tournament, I think that really needs to be kind of brought up and brought to the fore, because as the spokesman said, it's tried to carpet, but it's not a slight glitch. It's not a 20-minute queue to get in the stadium that shouldn't be there. It's people are losing their lives, and it's not the only one in the process of the preparations for this World Cup. So I do think it's important that people speak about it, and these things are reported.
I think it's something that we've never been faced with before, like this level of it. And I think there's a lot of people talking about, there has been improvements in Qatar since they were awarded it. And I'm sure there has been. I'm sure things aren't as bad as 10 years ago, 12 years ago when they were awarded it. But the point is, it's not been improved enough. And you can't just go, okay, well done. You've done a bit. No, there needs to be more. There needs to be more. And I think, like, in terms of like the activity of the protests, which protests are okay and which protests aren't as well, is a really stark thing. I think it is incredible, and it never would have happened in Europe, that there are Palestinian flags everywhere. It's becoming a whole meme of people screaming Free Palestine into cameras. I love it. It's amazing. It would never have happened if it was in a European country. That being said, that protest being allowed to happen, but anything with a rainbow flag being completely banned, and that one's not allowed, again shows the complete hypocrisy that we're seeing from FIFA repeatedly. I think there's a lot of discussions, even more discussions to be had after this World Cup. But I think what the main positive thing of this is that even casual viewers of football, and even people who love football but don't pay attention to politics, will at least now know a little bit more about it, and by proxy will understand what's happening more and hopefully care a bit more. So hopefully there'll be some kind of sea change afterwards. But the first thing is to get Infantino out of office. However that happens, I'm not sure. I'm thinking of just running for FIFA president myself. I'm not sure what
What's
kind
the
of
criteria?
I'm going to research and just be like, right, you know what? You officially have some opposition because someone has to go against them. I'm just not sure how it works. But we're going to kind of leave those stories here and kind of keep you up to date when and where we can. But for now, we're going to talk about some amazing football and some incredible knockout ties, and actually talk about the game we love. And we're going to talk, I think we're going to start with no Ronaldo, no problem. All of a sudden, Portugal go from looking like a fairly unimpressive team to potential winners of a tournament. And all it took was to put one man-child on the bench. Who'd have thought it? Fernando Santos finally kind of makes a tough decision. It's kind of forced on him, the decision, I think, because of Ronaldo's behavior. But they absolutely destroy a Switzerland team that had looked really, really competent up until this point. Looked like they could cause anyone problems. This was anything but a contest. Adam, I'm going to get your thoughts first. Portugal, Switzerland. What did you make of it?
I didn't expect that scoreline, that's for sure, to start off with. But a new star was born. Gonçalo Ramos, where was he? I mean, I think we both kind of said, where's he? Who is he? Where's this happen? Because prior to this kind of game, he'd only played 30 minutes for Portugal. So this kind of shows you it's kind of very raw. There was a lot of hype around him at Benfica, and I think Benfica were kind of proud of the fact that they got rid of Nunes and kept him, which kind of says a lot about him. I know if you remember Vinicius, who used to play for Spurs, but he was bought from Benfica, he kind of said he was the kind of striker that he would not leave a ball untouched, in the sense of it wouldn't be in the area, it'd always be in the back of the net. There was always that kind of potential around him, and boy did he show it. I mean, I think that was almost the perfect kind of hat trick that you could have asked for. Apart from it, he didn't header it right, but even that third one where he chipped it so delicately over his summer was incredible. But even the first one, just with his left peg, and he just blasted it into the top corner. I've always felt with Portugal, though, I don't know about you, Rory, but I always feel like they would play better without Ronaldo, because Ronaldo's an ego. And for years bygone, they were always reliant on Ronaldo because he was the man that would help them out. He was the man to give them the quality. Whereas we know what he's been like for Man United and Juventus over the last few seasons. He's just that egotistical twat up front that everyone you have to pump the ball up to. Whereas Portugal, actually, when you take that out, they play so much better. They play so much more fluidly, and they seem much more, I don't know about you, but I thought they were much more relaxed. They didn't seem to have that kind of stress. What did you think about it, Rory?
I think they looked like, the kind of shackles had been taken off to a degree. They were energetic, they were attacking, they were vibrant, they were expressive. I always felt about this Portugal team, and I kind of always put it down to Fernando Santos, really, that he was a bit of a conservative, boring manager. They never played particularly exciting football. But once they had someone in Ronaldo's position that was able to actually run and be dynamic and able to press and cover ground, you saw the change immediately. Now, we've said for ages, Portugal have got an incredible squad with so much talent in that squad. And I think a lot of depth, even on the bench. We've talked about England's depth on the bench. I think Portugal's depth is right up there, bringing on Rafa Leao. and he just scores that incredible goal at the end. Like, obviously, we love Leao. We watch him in Serie A every week. We know how great he is, but having someone like him to just come off the bench is kind of. Last episode, we made the point about England with, you just bring on Grealish and Rashford, whatever. I think Portugal kind of have that as well. As just bring on Leao, just bring on this guy, bring on and they've got a lot of depth, and maybe just Ronaldo not being there and Ronaldo acting like a child and not turning up for training or whatever it was has actually done his country a favour. I think it would be very funny and quite poetically beautiful if Portugal won it with Ronaldo on the bench. I would really enjoy that. As much as I would like to see England win it, I would really enjoy that happening. Mark, what do you think of this Portugal team? They've all of a sudden they're being talked about as favourites, or not favourites, kind of second, third favourites. A week ago, nobody was saying this, right?
Yeah, I think I tweeted out during that game that Portugal are an infinitely more likable team for some reason. And I was being a wee bit facetious, but actually they were, because they were a lot better to watch than they had been. They were entertaining, they were attacking, and I really enjoyed them. And I did, for the first time, kind of think they might have a chance of going to the final. When you look at they're probably in the preferable half of the draw. For that respect, albeit that they'll have a difficult semi-final. But I think Ronaldo's been a problem the past couple of years, hasn't he? He was a problem towards the end of his time at Juventus. He's been a problem at Manchester United. I think particularly Manchester United realised that they were better without him in the team, and I think he's maybe been surviving by his own numbers and his own stats rather than the team's stats, and it's the old favourite of no one player's bigger than the team. And I think that's what's happened at Man United, and that's what's happened with Portugal as well. I think he was maybe just too big a character, and it maybe took the light away from some of the other players, and now that he's gone, they can kind of step out of his shadow a wee bit, and then maybe a little bit more free like that yesterday.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think I was also, on the same hand, I was very disappointed by Switzerland. I know they were kind of forced into a tactical kind of system change. They were forced into a 5 at the back because of the injuries, and they were playing in a shape that I think in the past they know they've not done particularly well in. So I think the chips kind of fell quite well for Portugal as well. But I think it's such a, after what was, I think, quite an impressive performance against Serbia, to kind of like getting pegged back and still getting that goal, pegged back, score again. I was surprised to not see more fight from Switzerland, not just Granit Xhaka holding his bollocks at the bench, but some actual fight on the pitch. I was kind of a little bit disappointed that they went out quite quietly. What did you think, Mark? Did you expect more from Switzerland?
Yeah, I did a bit. It did seem quite a meek departure, given the ball grab that went on in the previous game. But yeah, I actually was kind of thinking that Switzerland were going to knock Portugal out, or at least get something from the game when we came up against them. They're a strange kind of team, Switzerland. I found them really difficult to work out with this World Cup, because they could look really, really good in spells, but those spells seem to be never over the whole game. So they were a frustrating kind of team, I found. But yeah, I was expecting a wee bit more from them in that game.
Yeah, Adam, what did you think? I thought they had a bit more quality, a bit more kind of discipline than that performance showed.
Yeah, I thought they would maybe not be as open as perhaps Portugal made it seem like. And I don't know whether it's a combination of Portugal were just seemingly up for this match. They seem to be unshackled by not having to play it to Ronaldo and play their own natural game. But then, yeah, I thought they'd be a bit more disciplined as well in terms of Switzerland. We know about the qualities on Mbolo, for example. I thought Xhaka was quieter in this particular match. I thought he had a lot more control in the previous round. Shaqiri, I didn't find he did too much. That could be a generalization of his general play, though, to be fair. And then, yeah, defensively, I thought they were so easy. it felt like Fabian Schär had his worst game of the tournament. And Fabian Schär has had a fantastic season with Newcastle, not just with Switzerland as well. So to see how easy it was for the likes of Gonzalo Ramos to kind of go in front of him for that second goal. I mean, it was a bit like worrying that he was going to have this game. But again, maybe it was also a bit of tiredness. That's what we probably have to give. And maybe Switzerland as well. I mean, if you offered them the last kind of 16, I think they would have taken it prior to the tournament starting off. I think there's promising signs about, Switzerland's Okafor, who came off the bench a few times. I think he'll be a good player in years to come. With Mbolo, I feel like he's maybe 1 or 2 seasons away from playing for a bigger club if he continues that kind of performance levels as well. Because I think, like we said kind of before in our previews and various reviews, he was in Germany for most of his career so far, and then he's been in Monaco. So whether this helps him out in terms of being more prolific, hopefully. I mean, he's got all the attributes. I think he showed it in his World Cup. But I mean, Switzerland obviously being marshalled by the ex-player Murat Yakin, who I used to love those Yakin brothers for Basel.
Hakan and Murat.
Exactly. They were blast from the past. So I feel like there's something enthusiastic. Maybe something's brewing for Switzerland, but maybe this is a tournament where we didn't see the potential just yet. And years to come, we might be saying, "Oh, Switzerland! I remember those players," and they might be building on that. So. They did well, but for this match, I think a bit disappointing.
And finally on Switzerland, for United fans, just as they were linked to Jan Sommer, he dropped the worst performance I've ever seen him have in a World Cup. And I thought, that's why United are looking at him. There you go. Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. But we do need to move on to the team that Portugal are going to be facing. And that is, of course, Morocco. And to do that, we're going to go to friend of the show, Basri, as he reacts immediately after that incredible win for Morocco.
It's the best night ever. It's happiness everywhere here in Morocco. We are really happy. Everyone is happy. Everyone is smiling. Everyone hugs everyone. Everyone is really proud of this national team. We were crying by happiness. We were really crying. Everyone was crying by happiness. We are in the quarterfinal. That's mind-blowing. That's really mind-blowing for everyone. I told you in the first podcast that we believe in our national team. We have great players. We have many fighters. They are great players who played with big teams in Europe, and they are fighters as well. And they love their country. And now here we are in the quarterfinal for the first time in the history of the whole of Arab world. And we are only the 4th team ever in Africa to be in this round. And now we have every right to dream. We are really close to be in the semi-final. Can you believe this? We are really close to the semi-final. We need to play by the same way, by the same heart against Portugal. And I'm sure that we're going to fight back. We're going to fight back against Ronaldo and co. So it's hard to describe what's happening here in Morocco. Not only in Morocco, but everywhere, in every African country, in every Arabic country, and in every country in the whole world, because Moroccans are everywhere and they are celebrating from Montreal in Canada to Milano in Italy to Paris to Dubai, everywhere. The Moroccans are really happy, and it's not a night to sleep. It's not the right time to sleep. It's fabulous. You can see some videos of the king himself. The king himself is celebrating with its people. We never saw that before. It's really mind-blowing, and we are happy. We are really happy. We made it through a difficult group. I told you in the first podcast that I believe, not only me, but everyone here in Morocco believes in Bono, believes in Hakimi, believes in Ziyech. And now we are making history. That's the word. We are making history. We made it through a difficult group, and we made it through in the penalties against Spain. Against Spain, we know they are the closest European country to Morocco, but it's a derby. It was really difficult, but we made it through, and we are happy. and it's the biggest night and the most happiest night in my life, in everyone's life, in every Moroccan life. So we are really proud. And as Walid Regragui, our coach, which is the first African coach who made it through to the quarterfinal, we still believe. We still believe. Like the song, like the official song of FIFA, we are the dreamers. Yeah, the song is about us. We are the dreamers, and I hope that we'll keep fighting till the end, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Honestly, when I got that voice note, I just had the biggest smile on my face. Like, Basri, thank you for that. It was incredible. Just see, and like, these are the stories of the World Cup that you love. This is why you love the World Cup, right? A country like Morocco, and I have to admit, like, when we did the preview episodes, when we did the preview shows, he was talking about how great this Morocco side was. And I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, it's a fan getting a bit overexcited about his team. And like, you know, I don't know how much I believe in this, the quality of this team. But then the more you've seen them play, and then the more the names do kind of jump out, and you're like, oh, actually, they have got Mazraoui, who plays first choice for Bayern Munich. They have got Amrabat, who now everybody's seeing how good that guy is, and I don't think he'll be at Fiorentina much longer. Like, they have got Ziyech, they have got Hakimi, and all of a sudden the names do come out. This is a squad with a lot of quality, and I think more importantly, incredibly well coached. Like, the performance they put in against Spain, just they never lost their shape. And Spain we're going to get onto and what was wrong with them. But I think no matter what Spain did, the players never lost their shape. They just shifted across, stayed on the job, and played the football they've played the entire tournament. Low block, catch a team on the break. And I think their XG with alongside Spain was basically 0.01 difference across the 90 minutes. Like, they created like as many and as dangerous chances as Spain. Spain did nothing except pass the ball. And Morocco, I think, rightfully got through. Like, the penalties were incredible. I love Hakimi Panenkering the country of his birth out of a World Cup is just unbelievable. Like, the amount of balls that takes. But Adam, I'm going to go to you first. Morocco, Amrabat, how impressed have we been?
Yeah, I kind of called it. I said this would be the shock. I did call it. I said this would be the way it would go. Maybe not in a fashion, but certainly that Morocco would win this. I'm just happy. I mean, Basri kind of summed it up, just like how joyous that moment was. It was like you can't help but have that little smile for them. Like they were just so exciting prior to this round. They played a bit more pragmatic, it has to be said, but you know, they absorbed what Spain threw at them, which wasn't a lot, it has to be said. It was just, making sure they kind of tied themselves out by trying to kind of do their passing moves and then just kind of counterattack them. And I thought they were unlucky on occasions. Khedira in extra time had that chance smothered by Simon, for example. But even when you went into penalties, it felt like they were confident. Like, from that first kick, like, I just felt like, wow, okay, so Spain missed, then it was Morocco, and the way he kind of just turned up, it just didn't seem like it dawned on them that this is penalty shootouts. It was like they were just going, we're going to win this. And there was that confidence about Banu, who obviously Basri calls out. You know, it was his third game. Like, he hasn't played every game in this tournament, but
it's incredible.
Just how they seem to work together. And when you look at the names, yes, you have got the likes of Ziyech, but you've got players that are playing in the French league, like you know, the second division of the French league. So they're not even in playing for the big clubs as well. Like, we've talked about players like Ilias Chair, who's playing in the Championship. He hasn't really turned up yet. The Khedira, who we know from Bari as well. It's great to see him on the pitch for once. But I mean, again, he hasn't really featured that much. So it just goes to show you the strength that they've got in their first 11, and it's just the way they play, just fight for each other. And that's kind of what's been instilled by the manager. And it's great that they've actually got a homegrown manager, an ex-player, who's kind of building this philosophy. He kind of alluded to the fact that they might not play total football in the next round, which is like, we know they can play it, but I think he's also a bit more pragmatic. He knows who they're going to face. So he's just going to make it difficult. And do you know what? I got this funny feeling about Morocco. They could pull it off, and that would be treatable.
We have just talked about how amazing Portugal are, but I do still have a feeling about Morocco. Mark, what's impressed you most about Morocco? Which players have stood out? And how surprised have you been by them?
I have been surprised and feeling a bit stupid, really, because probably shouldn't have been surprised when you look at some of the players that you're mentioning there. And kind of, I think pre-tournament, I think countries like Morocco are always kind of almost forgotten about, and I think it's so uncommon to see a real shock kind of team go deep into a tournament nowadays, and I think that's what I've enjoyed most about it. And that clip of Basri there, there's a big smile on my face. Listening to how brilliant was that, listening to him and how he feels about it. And I think that you get that from watching Morocco, I think, as well. You get the sense that, they've got a lot of fans there. The team are feeding off of that. And as you said, Adam, when it went to penalties, I don't kind of think the underdogs have got a slight advantage when it goes to penalties, because they weren't expected to win, so they've almost got a bonus by being there. But yeah, as soon as that went to penalties, because the whole game I was kind of willing them to hang on in there, because you kind of got the feeling, Spain are going to get a goal at some point, because that's kind of what they've been doing. And then when it got to penalties, I thought, yeah, they're not going to do this here.
Yeah, I think with Spain, it was kind of an interesting one. Like, I think Enrique has left the job now, right?
Yeah.
He left the job today, so that didn't take long. That's another manager out the competition, out of a job. There you go, done. What do you think? I think with Spain, it was the whole thing of passing but zero ideas, no threat whatsoever. And even when they brought on Morata, which we've talked about previously in the episodes, where maybe Morata's a better option to come off the bench, they brought him on, and it didn't really make much of a difference. It seemed like they only have plan A. And are Spain too married to this tiki-taka thing now? Was it even tiki-taka? I don't know if it was. Like, no. What did you think of Spain's performance, Mark? Like, how... Yeah, it just seemed a bit blunt, right?
Yeah, exactly that. It was keeping the ball but not doing anything productive with it. And I think I wrote down that they had over 1,000 passes, 77% of possession, but they only had one shot on target the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, how can that? And that just sums it up. I think that says it all. That it's possession based, but it needs to lead to something, and it used to, with Spain, really effectively lead to something, but I think now it doesn't, and they've got the possession part of it, but they don't have that incisive final third piece of the puzzle anymore.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Whereas in the past, they would have had a player like David Villa, who was so dynamic and so lethal on counterattacks as well, and such a clinical finisher. Yeah. They haven't got that now, right? And I think, Adam, would you still class this as tiki-taka? Because I think tiki-taka still had a bit of slow, quick. This was just slow, right?
I'm just going to use the analogy we used for the Argentina versus Poland match for the last 20 minutes, where you had that Simpsons episode where the players passed amongst each other, and that was basically Spain for this match. Yeah. I mean, I do kind of worry about Spain, because you think you rightly call out Villa was probably the last generation of a striker where you could have kind of claimed they were prolific, and now going forwards, Morata's there, Ansu Fati. Then I think you struggle, because you kind of there's Gerard Moreno, who plays obviously for Villarreal. He hasn't had a fantastic season. There was surprises about his omission from this squad as well. But then thereafter, I don't know who's coming through. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head. There's no one talked about at the under-21 level. They're kind of trying to naturalize a few players, it sounds like, at the moment, which, when you get into that kind of territory, you kind of wonder what's happening at Spanish level. They seem to be producing these kind of talented kind of midfielders, but no one that can offer them something. I think they've been kind of floating about the idea of maybe Adama Traore playing up front, and we know how blunt he is when it comes to attacks. Great at running up people with oil on his skin, but that's about it, right? So I think there was always going to be an inquest after this tournament. The fact that Luis Enrique's decided to go, and of his own volition, kind of says to you that maybe he just didn't see much point going further forward with the projects. There was always promise after that Euros performance, but now you kind of look at this and kind of go, there's going to be issues, because Busquets going to go. Now I can see him retiring off the back of this tournament. So then you're left with possibly a situation where you haven't got a really good goalkeeper. Defensively, they're a bit suspect by the fact that they haven't got many experienced pros there at the back. Midfield is quite promising because it's led by Barcelona. And then you've got basically no one up front. So I think we could be seeing like a demise with Spain, a bit like a few years back where they were kind of like reaching to the point where they got these really talented squad together. So I don't know. I do wonder who's going to be the next manager for Spain going forward. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head. Who would you think would be a great alternative? Would Martinez be considered? I don't know.
Go back, a homecoming. I'm not sure if he... Oh, I don't know. I'm honestly, names to replace Luis Enrique, I wouldn't be sure. The only thing I'd be certain of is that they'll be Spanish. I'm just not sure who it would be. I think with Luis Enrique, it's interesting because before the World Cup, we were talking about how he's arguably the best coach at the World Cup. He's like the best manager of the World Cup. But I think it kind of raises a really interesting point on club managers versus international managers and how different a beast it is. How different, like the countries that are going far now don't really have managers that have had any success at club level, really.
Yeah.
Like Gareth Southgate is doing a great job with England, was not good as a club manager, right? Deschamps did pretty well at club management, to be fair. Deschamps did quite well
average,
at club management.
I would say.
I think Fernando Santos never really did much at club management. Scaloni hasn't. Chiche hasn't. Like, I feel like a lot of the international management is such a different beast to club management that it just takes, when you're trying to get together really intricate attacking patterns, you don't have the time to implement that. You don't have the time to implement these highly complex, like red string on a cork board kind of madness. It has to be like, right, how can we be quick effectively? Or how can we be effective quickly even? And I think maybe it was just a bit too complicated for tournament football. And if you don't have that backup plan, then it just becomes an exercise in, I don't know, like just treading water. I just think it sounded incredibly boring to watch, to be honest. Just 11 blokes passing the ball amongst themselves forever. It sounded quite
maybe from next week they'll see Michniewicz is available and look at his success and go, he's our man, right?
That's it.
He didn't need anything really. He got us through the stages, so that's a fantastic record for Spain. But yeah,
maybe they'll take him off your hands. But for Spain, I think there is a thing of them producing too many of the same type of player. I think there's always that thing of like, I don't know, no kid grows up wanting to be Gary Neville or whatever the thing Jeremy Carragher said, right? I think every kid in Spain wants to be Xavi, wants to be Iniesta, right? That's the kind of glory position. That's the like what all the praise is heaped on those types of players. And they've just produced an incredible amount of highly technical little players. But you need someone to aim for. So I think maybe there's something in the development there that they need to look at. As this World Cup will be for every national governing body, will be right, what do we need to look at now? What do we need to address? For Spain, it's right, we need to start producing strikers because I don't think they've got many. Like, Mark, what do you think the main problem is with Spain? Where do they start to address this performance?
I think, like you say, they've always had in the past, not so much a focal point, but they've had a striker that can get them out of a hole in these games that they've been struggling in, whether it's been David Villa or Torres in the past. I don't know if they've got that at the minute. I think that, Morata maybe has been that in the past, but I don't think he is now. They're not going to rip it up and start again. They're not going to abandon it. I don't think they may have to tweak the way they're playing, but I don't think they're going to abandon it. But it might be interesting to see who. I don't know if they've appointed anyone yet. Enrique, they certainly have. When I heard that he'd left, so it'll be interesting to see which way they go.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's being linked to it so far. There's not been many names brought up at the moment, but we will keep on top of it as we see it. De La Fuente has taken over in the meantime. I think he's taken over as kind of interim manager, but it seems like that's very much not a permanent appointment. So we will see where that goes. But we need to talk about the manager on the other bench. Walid Regragui, the first African manager, as Basri said, to make it through to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Incredible performance. It's just great to see all the African teams this year represented by managers from their own country. It sounds like not much, but that was never a common thing before. It used to always be kind of washed up European managers that ended up in charge of African teams. So it's great to see them creating their own coaches, and they're making a serious stamp on this tournament. I absolutely love it. Listeners will know that we love African football on this podcast, so I'm very, very happy to see Morocco absolutely killing it and making their own coaches. I just finally want to say Amrabat was absolutely fantastic as well, and I think he arguably could be in team of the tournament come the end of the tournament. He's been one of the best midfielders, and I always feel like for Fiorentina fans, you'd be like, oh, yes, he's doing so. Oh, crap, he's doing so well. Like, it means he might not be for La Viola for much longer. We'll kind of find out. But I think already there's a few teams going, okay. Yeah, how much would that be? I think Juventus have already seen kind of give some looks. If they can find any more money from those magical accounting books, maybe they'll be able to make a bid. Who knows? But we'll catch up on that as well. But what we do need to do is preview the upcoming games. So, listeners, for you today, for you tomorrow, for us, you have, what a day. What a day. Croatia taking on Brazil and Netherlands taking on Argentina. Now, seeming as you are both adequately dressed for this fixture, I think we will start with Netherlands versus Argentina. And I'm going to go first. Mark, you can cover Netherlands. Let's do it. What are you expecting from Netherlands? What have you thought of them in the tournament so far?
I think that they look like a Netherlands team that haven't been there for a while. I think they've got a bit, when they were struggling for those years, they looked a kind of a jaded kind of. It's almost like they were searching for their identity. They didn't know who they were anymore, and they seem to have got a bit of that back. I think a little bit of the swagger, a little bit of the belief. I think a lot of that probably comes from Van Gaal on the sidelines. He's certainly been on good form as well off the pitch in his interviews in the tournament. I think it's a really difficult game for Argentina. This, I know, maybe pre-tournament you wouldn't have put this one being so close as it is. I think this is a 50-50. This could go either way. I really do.
Yeah, and Adam, what do you think about Argentina? I think Mark's right. It is kind of more evenly balanced than I anticipated. At first thought, I was like, okay, Argentina get through this. I'm like, do they get through this?
I think one thing you have to hand to Holland, I feel like, and in particular Van Gaal, he's very astute in terms of his tactics and his approach, right? So I feel like he will not necessarily kind of play the total football all of the time, but he knows the moments when they have to maybe create the opportunities and when they have to pull back and maybe defend a bit more. And I think that was evident in the USA game, for example. He kind of made sure that USA tired themselves out and then he kind of countered. He knew the strengths of his own players and he knew what could be used in certain moments. So I think, yes, we might not look at this squad and kind of say it's star-studied, but he's got them playing a certain style that is winning them games. And I think people at home in Holland, certainly in the Netherlands, are feeling confident. They're feeling like, they probably didn't have a lot of trust about Van Gaal, particularly in terms of his style, but they're actually backing him because, as Mark alluded to, his antics off the pitch are also warming to him as well, to the general crowd. So I think that's really heartwarming for every fan. We've kind of joked about it on our pod about some of his mannerisms, like hugging reporters, kissing Denzel Dumfries, and telling his wife he's at home ready for Nookie, right? But then if we talk about Argentina, I think the one thing you'll say is doesn't feel like a complete Argentina squad. Like, I don't think if you look back at some of the winning Argentinian sides, you'd say they were amazing during the whole tournament. I feel like they always struggled, but they got better and better as the tournament's gone on. This time, the one thing I think we probably don't give enough credit is that they have this fantastic run of not conceding a lot of goals up until that Saudi Arabia result, right? So I think even when you go beyond that, they've got a really strong defensive line. Like, in Emiliano Martinez, you've got a fantastic goalkeeper in front of him, Otamendi and Romero. I know Otamendi has a clanger in him, as does Romero at times, but they seem so strong as an Argentinian back line. And then that kind of builds that confidence up ahead of them. They've got experienced pros mixed in with, players that have got probably a bit more legs about them, bit more emphasis in terms of that pace, energy, like the likes of Enzo Fernandez, for example.
Yeah.
I've been really interested to see how he kind of continues a little bit of the form that we saw at the first few games, because I don't feel we've seen the best of him yet. But with Messi, he just seems to be on this mission, like at the moment, to kind of make it his tournament at the moment. And that's where it seems to be all about, like the players are doing it for him. They did it at, obviously, the Copa America. They're trying to make sure he wins this World Cup this time round. I think it will be a tight game. I would not be surprised if this game goes all the way to penalties myself.
Yeah, I know. I think you're absolutely right. I think what concerns me about the Netherlands is that the USA did still get chances. The USA, we said at the time, if they'd have had a striker, the USA actually could have got through that game. They just don't have a striker. So I think Netherlands, they still give up chances. And maybe if you do that to Argentina with Messi, it doesn't go the same way. What's good for them is that Lautaro Martinez has been absolutely terrible in this tournament. So he's kind of letting a lot of teams off at the moment. But I think there will be chances for Argentina, and I think they're a bit more clinical than the US. But then, that being said, the Netherlands, they're incredibly clinical when they go forward. Cody Gakpo, 3 goals in 4 games now? He just seems to score every time he gets the ball. And I think they are like the other side of that US performance was that the Netherlands scored every time they went forward, and every time it felt like they were going to score. So I think they are very dangerous on the break, but it does leave them open. So I think it is very evenly matched. I think you're right. We could see this go to penalties. But I'm going to push you now, both, for just in one word, Netherlands or Argentina, who goes through? Mark?
Netherlands.
Adam?
Argentina.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to go Argentina. I'm going to have to go Argentina. I feel like there's a thing with Messi. But we're going to move on to the next game. And it's the earlier game for you. 4 o'clock kickoff in Italy, 3 o'clock in the UK. Croatia versus Brazil. Now, Brazil absolutely murdering South Korea, as we covered in our last pod, making it look super easy with Richarlison in incredible form. Everyone dancing, everyone having a great time, coming up against a Croatia team who do have the capability of boring people to death and are incredibly good in extra time. Adam, I'm going to start with you first this time. Croatia versus Brazil. What do you expect from this game? Yeah, what do you expect?
I hope we see a Croatia side that actually tries to go for it from the kickoff, because I think they've been kind of like absorbing it a bit of late. Like they've been trying to invite the pressure, and that's a bit of a weird one for them. But then there's an element of me that thinks, are they tired? But they don't seem tired. So I can't work them out at this stage. Like I do feel there's weaknesses in that Croatia squad, but then equally I look at the experience that they've got in the likes of Brozovic, Perisic, Modric, and they just seem to be really like they've got a plausible squad. They've got some like outlets that can help them like grind out results. One thing that I think is the weakness is probably up top. Now we've talked about it for a lot, and Kramaric, he's due. He's probably the only kind of quality player they've got up there. I know we've talked about Maya potentially being that potential going forward as well for generation potentially, but at this moment in time, he hasn't really shown too much apart from that one game against Canada. So for me, I do feel that if Brazil, and I know they've got quality depth in that midfield, but also defensively, I think if you keep that midfield quiet, then there isn't much that Croatia can offer going forward. Like I've kind of like alluded to it, like Juranovic, he can be hot and cold sometimes on that right-hand side. And you saw Modric having to kind of almost be a wingman for him down that right-hand side in the last match. So I do feel like this could be one of those games where they do struggle. I'm expecting Brazil to win this. Not handsomely, though. I think it'll be a bit tighter. But I think Brazil will win this probably like 2-1. I think it's going to be a very tight scoreline. Maybe Croatia might score first, but then by inviting the pressure, when you've got the quality that Brazil have got, they've shown it in the last rounds, they can handsomely do it. And I suppose just for Roy Keane, we're just waiting to see what celebration they do. Is it going to be the Macarena or Wigfield or something like that? That'd be classic, right?
Yeah, no, I hope it's completely choreographed and it takes about 20 minutes just to see Roy Keane like pop a vein. But Mark, are we seeing a return to the fun Brazil, right? Brazil look like Brazil again. It feels like a while since we've seen exciting, attacking, terrifying Brazil. Like, have you enjoyed them? What do you expect from this game?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that last game. I enjoyed all the dancing and everything around about it, because that's what you kind of come to expect from Brazil, isn't it? That's what Brazil are. And I think it is a kind of return to kind of the Brazil that we once knew. It's probably been a long way back from them since that kind of Germany game in the semi-final. That's kind of probably the nadir for them there. But coming into the tournament, I always feel that Brazilian players always play better for Brazil than they do for their club sides, or not always, but they certainly tend to. Players like Richarlison, they just seem to find a different level when they're playing. Maybe it's because they're playing with players that they've got a better understanding with, I don't know, but I think that's served them as well, quite well in this tournament. And I think Neymar being back is a big one for them. I was worried for them when he went down and looked like he was going to be out for the tournament, and then Jesus went out the following week, and I did think that might do for their chances. But Neymar coming back is a huge one, I think. And again, similar to Argentina in a way, I think he feels the weight of the country on his shoulders when he's playing for Brazil, and you just hope that he doesn't buckle under it. Same for Messi as well. You can sometimes feel that they're carrying that weight on their back a wee bit, and you kind of feel for them sometimes.
Yeah, well, and I think we're shaping up for an Argentina-Brazil semi-final, which is just going to be absolutely incredible. It's what people want to see. I'm sorry, Croatia and who's your one? Netherlands fans. But everybody wants to see that Brazil-Argentina semi-final. I think it's going to be explosive. I think Brazil should get through this. I think it will be close. But yeah, Brazil should be getting through this one. And then on Saturday, guys, I'm going to save England-France till last. Let's quickly go Portugal-Morocco. We've kind of talked about them before. I think Morocco could spring a surprise here. But with a newly changed Portugal, who knows? I'm going to go Portugal on penalties. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I do feel like if we see the same squads that played in the last round, and I ultimately feel like Ronaldo should be benched again for this one, I think then we could see Portugal really go through. Unfortunately, I think Morocco, they will be very conservative again. They will play pragmatically, but I think they're going to have to be a bit more willing to attack Portugal and leave themselves exposed. And I think it will be those elements that potentially might lead to a goal for Portugal, because Portugal, I feel, have been very clinical on the break. Yeah. Like when they've had moments where they've been able to kind of attack teams when they've had nothing against them in front of them in that sense, then they seem to be much more clinical. Like you say, Rafael Leao, we haven't seen the best of him yet, but when he has come on, he's looked a threat every time. And I just feel like that could be a game where maybe he mixes it up and brings him on, because we've talked about Morocco play a lot down the wings. So with Hakimi Ashraf, for example, Ziyech, for example, Boufal on the other side, they might leave that kind of side very exposed. So do they sacrifice that and be more defensive and then leave themselves really short in terms of attacking? I don't know. I think it's going to be a tight match. Like you say, it could go all the way in terms of penalties again in this match. But I would say that on that basis, I think Portugal have just that little bit of quality that might help them over the line.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Mark, what do you think? What do you expect from Portugal versus Morocco? We will find out another time what Mark expects from Portugal versus Morocco, and we are going to move on to England versus France. It's the one that we're all looking forward to. It's the big one. It's the biggest tie of the round. It has to be. It's the biggest tie of the round. It's a massive game. I'm already shitting myself. Oh, God, it's going to be horrible. England versus France. Mbappe against Trippier? No, against Trippier probably.
Trippier,
or Kyle
Kane,
Walker.
Alexander Arnold, all of the above.
It's a good job we've got a lot of right backs, right? It's a good job we've got a lot of right backs. Plenty of people to cover Mbappe. This is a game that, and it's always football does it to you. At the beginning of the week, I was like, you know what? Don't even get your hopes up. Don't even get your hopes up. It's France. Whatever happens, happens. You'll just have to get on with it. And now I'm starting to believe. I've watched too many YouTube videos with patriotic music and inspiring messages, and now I feel like we could actually do it. I'm terrified. Adam, what do you think? England versus France? What do you expect the game to be like, and how do you expect Gareth to line up?
I think there's been talk in midweek around the fact that he's going to play a attacking player on that same side that Mbappe plays. So to almost kind of stretch out that side, so almost like give it a pivot in the sense of like you can play your card, but we'll also play this card potentially. I almost feel like, though, he should stick with the team that's got them so far, because I feel like they feel much more comfortable with themselves. I feel like if you overthink it almost and try and put an extra man on Mbappe, let's say, for argument's sake, you still leave yourself exposed to Griezmann, or you leave yourself exposed to, for example, Giroud, who we know can have a habit of scoring goals. Now, I think it'll be very interesting to see how he plays against the likes of Maguire, because I think he's had a very good tournament, but I don't feel he has had necessarily a talismanic player like Giroud that can be clever. And, you know, I think that's the difference. I think it'll be interesting to see that battle in particular. But I also feel like France are kind of not completely assured at the back, for example. So defensively, I think Poland did kind of flag a weakness in that team.
Yeah.
Lloris, for example, was flawed in that game. So clearly, I think, if anything, Southgate should look at that video and kind of go, right, set pieces. What can we do that exposes Lloris? In particular, I don't think defensively in the centre too, like Upamecano, yes, he's got his strengths, but he's also got some weaknesses. It's been flawed in the Bundesliga. So I feel like there are opportunities for England to exploit. I think equally, France are wary of England and they know about their threats. I think they recognise the likes of Kane. They also recognise Bellingham. I think everyone has. I mean, he just feels like increasing, like a commodity. I feel like he's just so mature on the ball. He's clever, but he's just got the all-round package, which every nation would love to have in their midfield. I don't think there'll be any midfield, like even if you said Brazil, I think they would easily have Jude Bellingham in their sides. And you know, that's talking about how highly he is as a player. I think he's really grown over the last few seasons. So I think England go into this with confidence. I feel it here at the moment. Everyone's looking forward to it. I don't think there's a sense of, I think in the past you would have been a bit more like scared about your prospects. This time around, it doesn't feel like that. And I feel like this could be a result that goes to England. I feel like this could be a 2-1 win for England. I'm going to call it. So let's see what Mark thinks, because being from Scotland, he might give the pessimistic view right now. But let's see.
Mark, what are you expecting from this game? And what have you thought of England in the tournament so far?
I was going to say, I didn't know if you were going to watch someone speak about England or not. England have got a brilliant. England have got a fantastic squad, a really, really brilliant squad. My concern for England, not that I'm not concerned to be honest, but my concern for England has always been Southgate. I think I look at the last two big tournaments, the Euros final and the World Cup semi-final. Both games when England were in front, and both games when the opposition take control, and Southgate wasn't able to the required changes to get through those games. And I just wonder tomorrow, he always errs on the side of kind of pragmatism. I do wonder if tomorrow he might, or Saturday rather, he might be a little bit too pragmatic and a little bit too defensive. And, he's got so much attacking talent. I think they're quite similar to France in a way, where all their strengths lie further up the field and the weaknesses in the team are at the back. So you would imagine it would be an attacking game because of that, but I don't know if it will be. I think it might be a cagey one, because as you say, I think France are wary of England, but similarly England know all about them. I would say about change formations, if I was in that French team and I heard that England were changing their formation to play against my team, I'd be thinking, yeah, we've got them. They're worried about us. And I think Mbappe in particular as well. I think that empower a player who's already feeling confident and feeling good about himself by the other team changing the entire formation just to combat you. It's a healthy compliment, I think. So I can't predict an England victory because I'll never be able to go out the front door again. But I think it will go all the way and penalties again.
Nice. Well, you know what? I'll take that. There's two players that I do kind of quickly want to kind of give, just maybe keep an eye on these players. I think Jordan Henderson absolutely changed the England team, absolutely changed the entire midfield. I hope Gareth Southgate sticks with him. He's a player that gets so much stick for not being flashy enough or not being exciting, but he is an incredibly, incredibly good midfielder. And I feel like he allowed Bellingham to do so much more just by his presence being there. I thought he was fantastic, Jordan Henderson. Not just the goal, but I hope Southgate sticks with him. I really feel like the midfield was a bit more rounded with him and Rice kind of sitting back. Bellingham was able to do a bit more. And then for France, Antoine Griezmann, the way that he has changed his game has been fascinating. I think we're looking at Ronaldo. We're talking about Ronaldo, a player who has been unable to change his game and ended up burning every bridge behind him. I think players have to change. Messi has changed the type of player he is now. Rooney did it. Like, players change, and I think Griezmann is doing a very, very good job at just being that number 10, just sitting behind the striker, those little passes, bringing everyone else into play, those through balls. I think he's been genuinely incredible for France, and I think he's a player that England should be keeping an eye on because he's going to tie everything together. I think he's been fantastic for France, and it's good to see because things haven't been going well for him at Atletico. Things aren't going well for anybody at Atletico at the minute, but particularly for Griezmann, and it's good to see him just go to France and ball out, and just, I like him as a player. He's a good player. So yeah, two players there that I think could be key, but people might not be focusing on. But guys, we are going to take a very quick break. That is the World Cup done for now. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk things Juventus right after this.
Hi, my name is Dimi Konstantopoulos and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And we are back, and it is time for this week's episode of the soap opera Juventus FC. And this week, there's not been too many advancements. I think there's been a little bit more detail, a little bit more kind of like sugar on top to kind of keep us interested. But of course, we're talking about the financial shitstorm that Juventus FC find themselves in. This week, I think the highlights were Giorgio Chiellini's messages, basically saying, guys, the bonuses are coming. Always in written form. That's always the best way to do it, right? So that's been the highlight. And a deal with Genoa, which has perked a lot of interest. This is the deal for, now I think the name is Portanova. So he was traded with Genoa. He went to Genoa alongside a player called Petrucci. Petrucci is now in Serie C, and Portanova has just gone to prison for sexual assault. Now, when he was sold to Genoa, he was already charged with this crime, right? He was already it was in the process of being kind of sent to prison. He's now been sent to prison for 6 years, I think it is. And now that was an £18 million deal swap to Genoa for Ravella, who was Genoa's brightest talent, is a very, very good player. And these two players and Ravella were deemed to be the same value. and they were traded. Now, this is kind of typical of what this scandal has been, but it's just an example of what it is, right? But Mark, I'm going to go to you because we've not heard your views on it yet. We've talked a little bit about it. How do you feel about Juventus in general, and how do you feel about this scandal?
Yeah, Juventus, it's kind of depressing, isn't it? You think they would have learned their lessons from 2006 and everything that happened then, and you would think, surely it can't happen again. And that's kind of what I thought when the news first. I thought, surely not Juventus again. Surely they learned their lesson. But no, and you've got all those stories like the Genoa player interwoven into it, which is horrible. I was just reading a bit about Portugal going to change things, and it's just, it's happened again. It's so frustrating, and people who talk down Italian football always kind of use the calciopoli and that as a stick to beat it with, and you try and defend it to people who like to kind of be down on Italian football, but it's so hard. It happens again, and it's Juventus again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am finding myself defending Italian football to my friends in England again. I'm like, no, it's really great. You should watch it, I promise. And they do find it harder and harder to believe. But the information that's kind of come out this week, Chiellini's messages confirming that, and the idea is that these bonuses. So they told, they put on social media that all the players have they're refusing 4 months' pay. Right, they're not having 4 months' pay to help the club continue with the running costs during COVID. It's now been kind of basically confirmed that they were still paying them, but off the books, right, under the table, not figuring. It probably Pavel Nedved with brown bags, right? He looks like the type, but I don't know. It's probably something along those lines.
With some handcuffs along the way, right?
Yeah, but
maybe fluffy ones.
Sorry, yeah, but I think it seems like this is now tying in Ronaldo alongside it. He's now suing Juventus for 20 million that they've promised him but haven't given him. It's just getting messier and messier by the day, Adam. Like, how do you think this is going to go? And how much detail is going to come out? There's going to be so much more, right?
I think there'll be more. I mean, so if we go back to how it started, Consob kind of said to Serie A and the Italian FA at the time, essentially, that they've got about 50 transfers that they are scrutinizing because they didn't think the legalities of these transfers were correct. Some of it linked to amortization, which we know is subject to obviously the financial reports that they have to do each year, but there's also around these valuations, as you allude to in the intro as well. But 42 of those transfers were directly with Juventus activities. There's also 17 players involved with these secret payments. So you kind of go, yes, this gets murkier and murkier the more you delve into it. And I think the fact that a few weeks ago when we were doing our live stream and that kind of like breaking news came through that the whole board had resigned immediately kind of indicates how bad the situation is and how engrossed the whole setup has been in terms of like protecting the values of Juventus and trying to just sweep it under the carpet and no one will know. But clearly the fact that they haven't declared this as part of their ongoing, accounts kind of allude to the fact that they are trying to hide a lot of these payments. They're trying to manipulate the system. The fact that it also kind of brings in Fabio Paratici, who you are loving because being an Arsenal fan and him being at Spurs, that kind of helps your case out a bit more there. So, yeah, it just seems to get worse and worse. I don't know to what extent this goes now. And it does feel like the more that we hear about it, the more that the punishment has to be really harsh for Juventus. Like previously they sort of got themselves out of being relegated to Serie C to just being relegated to Serie B. On this occasion, what we're talking about is that they've basically financial fraud. They've created fraud. So that's going to have its own fine. But then also as a league, you kind of have to set an example to say you cannot get away with this. So therefore, there's got to be a points deduction. But there's an argument that, we were talking last season about Salernitana being potentially relegated because they had a joint owner of a chairman at the same league, right?
Yeah.
Now, that for me, to a good degree, I understand why you wouldn't have it and you wouldn't want to promote it. But that seems like a little bit more lenient compared to like going out of your way to try and cheat the system. This is cheating the system. Now, you shouldn't like promote this, especially with a fan base like Juventus who are really well supported in Italy. So therefore, you've got to set the example to say cheats never prosper, right? And unfortunately, I do feel like Juventus have got this ingrained kind of attitude to kind of say, we have a right because we are the best club in Italy. We give you the commercial value of Serie A, etc., etc. We've seen it ourselves, Rory, with fans of Juventus trying to protect this face of we are Serie A. Well, sorry, actually, who's the club that has been prospering in the last few years? It's definitely not Juventus. So the example has to be set. Does the league have the balls? That is the question.
Well, I think this is, and in terms of the league, I was reading something today that said now the only way that they would be able to relegate them to Serie B, in theory, is if they could prove that if they hadn't cooked the books, they would have failed to get their license to play in Serie A before the season started. Now, it's very unlikely that Juventus, despite making record losses for Italian football, I think it was 256 million they lost in a year, they still probably would have been able to achieve that license. Now, this was on a Juventus fan blog I was reading, so again, it may be a fairly biased view of what can and can't happen. But I think what the really interesting thing is when UEFA get involved, because Agnelli also happens to be one of the people who's been banging the European Super League drum the hardest alongside Perez. So I think UEFA aren't particularly going to be light-handed with any punishments. I think even if Serie A and like FIGC, even if they say, no, you know what, it's just a points deduction, I think UEFA might turn around and say European ban. Like, I think UEFA might be a lot heavier-handed than the Italian authorities are. What do you think, Mark? What do you think would be like a just punishment, and what do you expect to happen?
I don't know. Does previous come into it? You know, does this form come into it? You know, if you're a criminal and you go to courts and you've got previous convictions, it counts against you and you get punished harder down the line. So does that come into play as well? As it's not their first offence by any means. There's so many. Like you say with Agnelli, and then you've got UEFA, the potential there. I don't think Serie A can go light if they think UEFA are going to go hard, because it will kind of make Serie A look weak. So I wonder if they maybe will have a conversation between them and decide jointly what the punishment should be. And I don't know, maybe that would be more a European domestic relegation. Maybe that would kind of keep both sides happy.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. And weirdly, in a twist that nobody saw, it feels like it's made Allegri's position even safer. Apparently, they turned around. They turned down his resignation when the board resigned. He tried to resign as well, and they were like, "Oh no, you're not going anywhere. You are staying here, mate." So, didn't expect to see that happening, but. We will keep you up to date with Juventus and the ongoing soap opera that is that football club. But for now, guys, I think that's everything. I think all we've got to do now really is look forward to the World Cup. And as always, we're going to send you out with our cards of Qatar. 3 stories of 3 migrant workers who lost their lives in the build-up to this tournament. The first story is Zubair Ahmed. In February 2020, Farzana Akhtar lost her husband and gave birth to their first daughter. Instead of celebrating a new life, she had to go to the airport and claim Zubair Ahmed's dead body along with $410 and a death certificate. He was 32 and had worked as a driver in Qatar for 9 years. The official cause of death said strangulation. It was unclear if he committed suicide or accidentally ended up hanging in his helmet strap. I refuse to believe that he would have taken his own life, the widow says. I see no reason why. Purparani Tamang. After a mandatory medical examination, Purparani Tamang was considered completely healthy and received her work visa. Once in Qatar, she got a job as a cleaner, which she was happy with because she did not have to work outside in the sun, says her mother. One day she was taken to the hospital. She told us there was no reason to worry, but a few days later I learned that she had died. I just cannot believe she's gone. Her body landed at Kathmandu airport just 4 days after she died, and her mother travelled there to receive it. Our daughter, who went to support her family, left full of life and came home dead. Last one, Bishal Ryan. In February 2020, the family picked up the body of their 20-year-old Bishal Ryan at the airport. The company did not say anything beside that he died in a car accident in Qatar's capital, Doha, on January the 27th, 2020. He had only worked in Qatar for 9 months when this happened, says his 47-year-old father, Bipul Raihan. After receiving the body, Bishal's mother has been paralyzed and the father is now trying to survive with his disabled wife and the 2 children in Bairab in Kishoreganj in central Bangladesh.